leadership, resiliency, optimism. What are they? How can we find them? And how can we develop them? Today's guest is Dr. Mike Finnegan, an assistant professor in the Staley School of Leadership Studies at Kansas State University. He helps us answer these questions, plus many others. We also discuss strengths and authenticity and how we can find them and how we can develop them so that they work for us. I'm Chris Bowman, health educator at Lafine Health Center, and thanks for tuning in to this episode on Thrive at Kansas State University.
Hey, it makes sense, right? You've got the strength of communication, so I wouldn't expect anything less than a communicator finding a podcast so you can amplify your voice out to people around the world.
Well, that's one thing. Like when we first talked, I was trying to remember my strengths, and I think I gave you a couple that weren't on there. But I think maybe that was me wishing they were on there. You know, you meet people that you're just drawn to, you know, and like for me, the people like with the maximizer, I think that's one of yours. I'm drawn to those people. I don't know what it is. I mean, it's not a bad thing. I don't know what it is, but those are the people that I'm drawn to, and I want to get to know and I want to connect with, you know. But yeah, nope, it was great.
You know, Chris, funny that you bring up maximizer. When I first took the assessment myself, I wanted developer.
Yeah,
because gosh. Graduate degree in college student development. I teach leadership development. Our mission statement at the Staley School, developing knowledgeable, ethical, caring, inclusive leaders for a diverse and changing world. And I got my top 5 back, and I thought, what's this maximizer all about, right? I want developer. And then when I read the definitions, you know, developer, gosh, those people are especially talented in this wonderful space where they can see and celebrate small wins and victories.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's cool. And that's also not me. But then when I thought maximizer, I started to think back, you know, years ago, I kind of saw myself as a high school educator, maybe a coach, but I never saw myself as like the freshman coach. I always saw myself as the varsity coach. Give me people with talent and skill.
Yeah. And
then I can maybe shape them a little bit. Well, that's that maximizer, moving from individual and or group excellence to something superb. And I think that's why I ended up here in higher ed teaching college students, because I'm already working with high ability, high achieving students.
You know, and that something you took out of there, what you said was you were hoping for certain strengths.
Yeah.
And then you get them, you know, you get your top 5 or what your top 5 strengths. And if something's not in there, I don't know if there was disappointment, but, you know, I'm kind of thinking I went in with that when I took many strengths, my strengths assessment. I didn't go into any ideas of what I wanted, but I wonder, does that happen to people? They go in and they have one they want, and when they get it, I don't want to say they're disappointed a little bit, but does that happen very often?
You know, when I talk to students, I think some students who are around the strengths assessment and kind of hear their friends talk about it, then they kind of get these ideas of what they then hope to maybe see in their own results. But that's I think the beauty of giving strengths to students here at K-State when they're first semester freshmen. So we get to hit them early, and they haven't really had a lot of strengths-based conversations. So they take the assessment really relatively unaware of what the entire 34 themes mean. So then they can honestly take the assessment through a clear lens. And, of course, Gallup does a wonderful job of giving you 20 seconds to answer every question, so you're not thinking, what does this look like when I'm at school? What does this look like when I'm in my hobbies? What does this look like when I'm at home just relaxing? And so it's really this first gut-level reaction to the questions that then give us our talents.
Man, It is a powerful tool, just like I said, and it's one thing we talked about when we were on the phone or doing a Zoom call about this. You know, I feel like my career, I don't want to say took off, but it took on a whole new meaning once I had my strengths, looked at it, and was like, how can I fit these into what I'm doing? Because then it creates passion in your career, what you're doing. And that takes your career to another level. You know, when you can incorporate those into your profession, because you already have a little bit of a passion for what you're doing, it is fantastic. And so that's one thing that I'm so thankful for, that people or students at K-State will get them as a freshman, because they can start that path. They can start figuring out, like, I have a passion here. How do I get my strengths incorporated in? And it's going to take them to the next level, which is really cool. So, all right, so I'm going to try this intro, kind of giving everybody an idea who we have here with us today. So we have Dr. Mike Finnegan. He is here with us today. Dr. Finnegan is an assistant professor in the Staley School of Leadership Studies. He's a recipient of the Kansas State University Presidential Award for Excellence in Undergraduate Training. Currently, Dr. Finnegan teaches Introduction to Leadership Concepts, Senior Seminar, and a Strengths CAT community. Dr. Finnegan has co-authored the book, Developing Knowledge, Ethical, Caring, and Inclusive Leaders, and he currently serves as K-State's campus lead to integrate Gallup's Clifton Strengths for students across K-State's campus to increase student well-being. That's a heck of an intro right there, Mike. We're excited to have you on. Thanks. So, like I said, thank you so much for coming on. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it.
You bet. Well, I was fired up and really excited that, gosh, we could even probably bring this podcast right into the classroom, because I know many of my students are looking for creative ways to basically absorb knowledge. So hopefully I can send this out to my students while they're working out at the rec and getting that physical well-being in.
Exactly. Well, you know what was really cool was, and it was a couple of professors at the College of Engineering. I was talking to them, and we were kind of brainstorming how can we help get well-being into their coursework. And one thing we talked about was taking our podcast and taking our episodes and assigning them to students to listen to and writing a reflection paper. Once, twice. I don't know how many times in a semester they would do that, but that's a creative way to introduce well-being into their course curriculum. And it feels a little bit different than just a regular assignment, because you got to listen to a podcast and things of that nature. And so that had some attention. So what you're saying is absolutely correct. Like, this is another way just to get out to students, get out to the K-State community and the community in general. What we have going on K-State, what's going good here, how we're taking care of our students, and how we are enhancing their well-being. So this is fantastic.
Yeah, Chris, I love that, because the research on Gallup shows that you really need about 5 to 7 touch points just for strengths to be sticky, let alone the engagement and the well-being that then comes when you productively leverage your strengths in what it is that you care about. So the more touch points we can give students to talk about well-being, hey, that's success.
Well, and well-being is, I don't know if I would say it's the future. I mean, we got to think about taking care of people holistically. And I love this idea of well-being, how we're now looking at every part of well-being and how we can incorporate it, how we can make them work together, and how we can take care of them. And what I think that does, too, in my mind, is it drives collaboration. You got to collaborate with other people. I don't know everything there is to know about emotional well-being. I'm a social worker. I know a little bit, but you know what? I need to connect them for financial, for physical, for that community and that career and things of that nature. It just drives collaboration and connection, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely, 100%.
Awesome. Well, we'll start out, Mike, with, I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, where you went to school, how you landed here at K-State.
You betcha. Well, hey, born and raised Manhattan, Kansas. When I think of home, I consider Riley County home.
Okay.
Largely because born and raised in Manhattan, graduated from Manhattan High School, but now my partner and I, we live north of town in Randolph.
Okay.
And we've been up there for 8 years.
All right.
So Riley County is definitely home. It's interesting that you asked, Mike, how did you land here at K-State? Because I'm actually second-generation faculty. My father was a forensic anthropologist here at K-State, so I knew a lot of the K-State community growing up. But mom and dad always wanted me to have that go-away college experience, which I think is so critical for students age 18 to 22 years old to get out on their own, really understand what it means to be independent. There's a lot of growth that happens. Well, back in the day, Chris, of course, it was the Big 8.
Yep.
And so mom and dad kind of put me in the little Subaru, and we tracked all throughout the Big 8 colleges at the time. And I'll be honest, I kind of fell in love with Oklahoma. Mom and dad both graduated from CU, so I kind of saw myself going out of state. But then I took my K-State visit, and my admissions representative was Heather Riley. She too was a Manhattanite, and I had a chance to get connected here to campus. And K-State asked me, they said, "Tell me about you. What are you interested in?" As opposed to just selling all their academic programs. And so when it came down to a decision time, and mom and dad said, "Mike, where are you going?" I said, out of all the places I went, I felt the most at home right here at K-State, even though it is home. And then my dad, I think he was a little upset, and he goes, "Mike, well, we can send you to K-State, but under one condition. we're going to drop you off in August, and you're not going to come home until Thanksgiving because we want you to have that go-away college experience. And so, Chris, gosh, I got involved in a fraternity here on campus, and really the rest was history, and it really felt like a go-away college experience for me.
Wow, that is what I picked up with that is you still remember your advisor that you came and saw when you came for your official visit. And what that shows to me is, and I don't know how many years ago that was, Mike, but what that shows is that you never know when you're going to have a lasting impact on somebody. You know, you never know when how you're going to act, what you're going to say is going to have a lasting impact on somebody. And it sounds like that lasting impact for you was, what do you want to do? They kind of put you on the spot a little bit to say, hey, as an 18, 19-year-old young adult, what do you want to do? And that seems like that really rang home true for you.
Yeah, gosh, and I've got goosebumps right now. Chris, a good friend of mine, Frank Hernandez, says you can't fake the goosebumps. And I've got goosebumps on my arm right now just thinking about that connection and how you highlighted the importance of relationships. Because here's how that story comes full circle. Just this last spring, Max Lansdowne, Heather Riley's son, was in my Lead 212 Introduction to Leadership Concepts class, and so I got an opportunity to work with Max one-on-one to really kind of say, hey, how can you grow in your leadership development? And so it's fascinating how if you make the connection to meet with people and care about people, it's amazing how the world finds a way back around.
You're exactly right. And so I've been here at K-State maybe about a year and a half. And I came from working on Fort Riley Military Base. And when I got here, I'd only been working here maybe 3-4 months. And I was trying to put some presentations together, get some guest speakers. And the one thing that stuck out to me as soon as I got here was when I would, email, call, talk to them, say, hey, can you help me out? Can you guest present on growth mindset? And you were part of that, do a resiliency workshop. The staff here, they looked for a way to say yes. If they saw, okay, you know what, this is going to benefit our students and our community, how can we get to yes? And it doesn't sound like I said, that you experienced that when you came for your freshman visit. I experienced something like that when I started working here at K-State. So it's about people and it's about those relationships, and that's what drives connection, which is huge. That's absolutely huge.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm excited about being here today, and hopefully you and I collectively can drop some knowledge for our listeners out there because, gang, I don't know if you know this about Chris, but Chris is an expert in motivational interviewing. And so when I saw that on your bio, I was like, watch out. This is and Chris, we're both woos.
Yep,
right?
Exactly.
And so when we think about woos, winning others over, the strengths language and kind of the strengths joke around that is that when two woos get together, it's a nuclear explosion. And so, gang, watch out today.
That may be the title of our podcast, a nuclear explosion. We'll just see where it goes from here, but or that should be the name of this episode. But yeah, no, the motivational interviewing, again, I trace it all back to my experience here at K-State, going through the social work program here. We had such great faculty and staff when I was here. Some have moved on, some are still here. And again, that motivational interviewing for me it was instilled here at K-State, but what it is it's listening, it's active listening, it's connecting, it's all that kind of stuff. And that's carried me further in my career, or that's come up and been helpful in my career more than anything. And so I think, I don't know if I'd say expert, can still keep working on it. But it is definitely something that I'm thankful that I've really kind of worked on and can consider a strength.
Yeah. And Chris, gosh, I love your definition of motivational interviewing and all the skills associated with that. In our world, right, in the leadership realm, we kind of call that coaching. What does it look like to take a coach-like stance to really be present and fully engaged with the people that you're communicating with?
Nope. I think fully engaged. That's a kid ticket right there. Making people feel like they matter, taking an interest in them, trying to find that connection. That's what it's about. So, all right. So your undergrad work was here at K-State. What'd you get your degree in here at K-State?
Yeah, gosh, criminology and geography. So when I was here at K-State, of course, my dad did a lot of work with forensic anthropology, and so I was connected a lot with law enforcement as a youth. And so my idea was I'd like to just basically buy my time out until I'm of age so I could go to the police academy. And I kind of saw myself working within community to make a difference. And I thought, being in law enforcement was kind of the place to do that. And then, funny story, and we'll talk a little bit about authenticity a little bit later. And I tell this story to my seniors spring semester right before they're ready to graduate and transition. And, even this last spring, it's always interesting because about half of your students already have full-time employment ready to go. And then there's another half saying, Mike, I'm in the job interview process, but I'm worried. Where am I going to land? I graduate. I don't want to go back home and live with mom and dad. What does life have in store for me? And I'm reminded that all my students see me right now as a 43-year-old accomplished professional who's taught leadership studies for the last 15 years, right? But what they don't see is Mike Finnegan, age 22, when I was in their shoes as a senior. And Chris, it's interesting how I kind of call it a crossroads moment.
Yep.
And these are the moments in life that actually I think back, strengths were at play, even though I didn't know my Clifton strengths at the time. And here's the story. I was sitting in Throckmorton in a class called Police and Society. And I was a senior, spring semester, wasn't really paying attention. I was reading the Collegian in the back of the lecture hall.
Yep.
And Lieutenant Q from the Riley County Police Department, he was our guest speaker for the day. Well, again, not paying much attention, but he asked a question, and the question was simply this: how are you going to respond to this question when you come home from work and you're off shift? And then I put the Collegian down, and I thought, what question is he going to ask? And the question he asked was, honey, how was work today? And I thought to myself, that's not a difficult question. That's a simple question. I mean, that's a common question that partners ask partners each and every day when they come home from work. And then he put this into context for me. And he said, Mike, the challenge here is that this was your first day on shift when you worked a fatality. And then I thought to myself, whoa. That's a difficult conversation. And then he went through his process as to how he worked through that during his time in law enforcement. And do you not share about your day to kind of protect your family from the things that you see as a first responder? And or do you share and then all of a sudden that makes your partner and or spouse more worried about, the next time that you're on shift because you're putting yourself in harm's way? Well, Lieutenant Q then went through the whole socialization of how law enforcement and police officers deal with the things that they cope with day in and day out as a professional. And so I remember just really saying thank you for sharing your authentic story with us to prepare us for what it is we're going to find later out on this field. And Chris, I'll never forget that walk home to, I was living off campus, Houston Street. So from Throckmorton across City Park to Houston Street. And it was the most sobering walk I've ever had because at the time I thought, gosh, I pride myself on my positivity and I'm about to potentially enter a career field that could strip me of that positivity based on what it is I'm going to see day in and day out. And at that moment, I made a life decision not to go to the police academy and not to go into law enforcement. So here I am, 22 years old, spring semester, thinking, what am I going to do? And at the time, I was on the K-State cheer squad. During my time cheering at K-State, the football team only lost 3 games. So it was Michael Bishop and Jonathan Beasley. So it was good times, but I remember thinking, what am I going to do next? And thankfully, Dr. Pat Bosco got a hold of me. And then that said, hey, Mike, check out this K-State admissions representative position, helps students transition from high school to college. And I interviewed. I got the job. Dr. Bosco gave me my first professional experience in higher ed. And then really the rest is history because I loved it. And so then I started to ask Pat. I said, Pat, how could I kind of make a career out of this AR position in higher ed? And he says, Mike, you got to go get a master's. So I started to get a master's in college student development. Had no idea that there was a master's focused on how college students navigate the college experience. And then I ended up at Central Missouri State University working with Dr. Matt Melvin, and he was phenomenal. At the time, I was new student services, director of orientation and campus visits, but I got my master's and then started putting some feelers out. And I'll never forget, I was in the application pool for both UNLV, imagine me down in Vegas, right?
Exactly.
Woo.
there'd be some long nights, I think, of just because I guess that's not the city never sleeps. That's New York, but anyway, that's got to be a close second.
Yeah. And so UNLV as an assistant director of admissions and also Flagstaff, and then I get a call from K-State, and I get a call from Dr. Mary Kay Seifers, and she says, "Hey, Mike, we've got a job opening here as an instructor position with the Staley School of Leadership Studies. Why don't you apply?" And it was awesome because I think I had some feelers back out with Dr. Bosco, and he knew that I was thinking about coming back.
Yeah.
And so sure enough, interviewed, got the job. Susan Scott, Dr. Bob Shoup, the co-founders of the Staley School of Leadership Studies, they gave me my first opportunity as an instructor. And at the time, I'd never formally taught. But as Susan said, she's like, "Mike, you've been teaching and coaching your entire life.
Yeah.
Now we can teach you the formal elements of classroom instruction, but we can teach you the content, but we can't teach the relationship and connections."
Exactly. That's what I was just going to pick up on. It was when, again, playing to your strengths, but again, they saw what maybe is a little bit more difficult to teach or maybe can't even be taught. And that's building those relationships, connecting with people. And I love what I love about that story is they didn't get really tied up in the fact that maybe they gave you an opportunity. They didn't get tied up in the fact that you've never done the classroom instruction. They saw something in you. And they're like, you know what? We can get this other stuff in. We just need to get that relationship builder into our department and at K-State. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and Chris, I think that's the hallmark of helping students identify their natural talents, right? And Gallup, and of course Don Clifton's strengths assessment, that then allows students to identify and actually put a name to elements of talent, which we'll get into here shortly.
That is exactly. So you got that. You got your master's, finished that, and now doctoral work. What program did you go, and where did you do that at?
Yeah, that was here at K-State, and
Nice.
it didn't take long. And I started to get excited about higher ed, higher ed administration, and of course I'm surrounded by faculty who have their PhDs.
Yep.
And then I just decided to jump back into the classroom one day, and then sure enough knocked out the coursework, and here I am, PhD in higher education administration. My research was on small groups, student leadership development, learning communities, and engagement. And so it was a natural fit to kind of play off what I was seeing and experiencing in the classroom, in a large lecture classroom.
Yeah. Well, and that's everything you just described. That is what needs to be kind of the cornerstone or something that's really deeply rooted into a college campus environment and community. The engagement, the connection, everything you just said is what, if we get passionate people to come here and to buy into that, I guess, mission statement or that mission, that's what takes a place and makes it truly special, like K-State is. Those connections, those relationships that we can build. That's what makes K-State special. When you get that, it makes it. It's just, like I said, it's just a recipe for success in my mind, and I think it's really cool. That's, like I said, when you say goosebumps, I got the goosebumps now just talking about it.
Yeah, well, let me ask, because that's a goosebump moment, so we got to kind of mine that a little bit more. Gosh, what was your first connection when you got here to K-State and you said, wow, now I feel connected. This was the right move for me, for my family, and life's going to be okay?
The goosebumps got bigger because mine is also a Pat Bosco story. I went to a junior college for 2 years, went to Cloud County Community College, and then I transferred into K-State. And I'm sitting in I think it was a union at the time, and we were doing our orientation, and Dr. Bosco came up and he presented to all of the transfer students. And we're sitting there, and he, talks about K-State, what makes it special. And when he comes off the stage, I'm kind of sitting in the front row, and we get up and we're leaving, and he stops and he looks at me. And I was the student body president for my high school, Clifton Clyde High School, 90 people in the entire high school. But he came and talked to our executive team for student council one day about K-State. And that was, 2.5, 3 years before. And you know how many people Dr. Bosco met on a daily basis, or who he communicated with. And so I'm sitting there, I'm getting up, getting ready to leave, and he stops and he just looks at me and he goes, "Chris Bowman, Clifton Clyde High School." And I said, "That's me." And he goes, "Bingo, I'm glad you're here," and turned around and walked off. And I thought, now that is something that instantly made me feel connected to the university. And it's those people and those relationship builders. And so then I left there, and I had that in mind, and I told my roommates about it, some of my friends, And they thought it was funny. But then we all kind of sat and it got a little quiet in the room and they said, wow, he remembered you from all the people he knew 3 years later. And that's when I knew K-State was a good spot. We had good people, good leaders here, good administrators that are looking out for us. And so that was a moment I was like, you know what? This is a great place to be. This is what everybody talks about, K-State being a community. That was a definition of it for me right there.
Yeah, gosh, Chris, we could probably have an entire podcast on Dr. Bosco moments.
Exactly.
He took the Clifton Strengths Finder assessment, and one of his top 5 is individualization.
Yep.
And when I heard that, it just made such sense because he was able to individualize the recruitment process of 3,500 incoming students to K-State, and he could personalize it.
Yep.
He could personalize it to you, and he always said, make sure people know your name.
Yep.
But yet he did his work to know the names of the students coming into campus, and that was so profound because, I teach leadership, and leadership is basically a relationship. In fact, simple definition, leadership is an influence relationship.
Yep.
And what better way to grab somebody's attention than to know their name?
Yep.
And so from Dr. Bosco, all these years later, Chris, I'm in large lecture with 180 students. And by the end of the 16-week semester, one of my goals is to know each and every one of my students by name. I'm not always there, but gosh, that's something else outside the curriculum because, gosh, if leadership is a relationship and we're teaching all these structures, theories, concepts, frameworks to help students develop positive relationships and influence relationships, but yet if I'm not modeling that from the front of the room and I don't know your name, then I'm really teaching something else.
Yep.
And so how can we all model what it is that we're teaching to be top performers in our work?
I like that modeling behavior. That's motivating for people. We had one of our episodes we had one of our doctoral practicum students from counseling services, and she came in and she was talking about her experience in the doctoral program. And I think it was she was coming from the place of being a single parent in advanced education and the struggles and the challenges. But she did say one of the things that really, really connected her to the program she got in was her professors all knew everybody in the classroom's name. And of course, it was a doctoral program, so there weren't a whole lot. She said, but she said that was just an experience she'll never forget, and that's something she took away with her is take an interest, try to get to build that relationship, build that connection, and starting with the name is a great place to start.
Yeah,
so that's awesome.
Gosh, gang, I tell you what, you're here with two K-Staters, and so we need to send this out to all the juniors and seniors in high school. Get to campus, come to K-State. We're going to know your name. We're going to take care of you.
That is one thing our navigators, the student group, the mental health outreach student group, they had an idea, and we're going to try to see if we can't get it to come full circle. Going to high schools as students, and I know the groups do it, but they want to do it to go and talk to high school seniors about what K-State is doing for well-being. So when they come here, we're taking care of your well-being. And one, it's for the students, and two, it's for the parents, it's for the families that they're coming from. If we go out and say, hey, this is what we're doing to help take care of you, it's never going to be easy, but it gives you a little bit more confidence. Like, okay, they're going to be taken care of. Somebody I care about, when they go there, will be taken care of. So, but yeah, this could turn into a recruitment podcast really, really quickly. Love K-State. Love the year. My wife and I, we both graduated K-State, and we just never left Manhattan. We're both from very small towns. So we've been here, and we love when the opportunity to come back here and work at K-State, it was one that I had to jump on because it's that getting to yes mentality. Yep. It's going to be beneficial for our community. People at K-State are going to help you get to yes. And that's something that I think is invaluable.
I love that you highlight that getting to yes.
Yep.
Right? I'm going to put a little different play on that.
Okay.
Because if we truly follow our talents and our strengths, right, then we might not know what life has in store for us.
Yeah.
But yet if we also get to yes and then follow the yeses, good things are going to happen, right? I always think of Coach Bill Snyder.
Yep.
Yes, he's a football coach. But before he's a football coach, he's been a developer of people. And he just happens to utilize football as his vehicle to influence and impact young men in his football program. And so how can we teach our students to understand their natural talents, leverage their talents, turn their talents into strengths, and then be top performers and follow the yeses, because open doors are going to lead to new areas.
Yep.
And I often think that I would have been a great high school coach. Well, I'm still coaching. I'm just coaching in a different kind of vehicle.
That's fantastic. I love the way you put that, the way that you put that together. The whole vehicle, I mean, just finding your vehicle, like I said, Coach Snyder's happened to be football. Finding that vehicle of how you're going to motivate and how you're going to get impact people. I love that.
Chris, the other thing around that vehicle, I think it's also important that people take a lot of risks in life and are willing to change vehicles.
Yep.
They don't have to change their purpose. They don't have to change their passion, but a different vehicle to do the same things that we love to do throughout a lifetime also allows us, I think, to continually be that lifelong learner and look at life through a growth mindset as opposed to a fixed mindset. Hey, here's my title, here's my job, here's what I do, but it's not who I am.
Yeah.
And so if we can find who we are and then find different vehicles to impact and influence others as we navigate life, gosh, I'm excited about what Mike Finnegan's going to be doing at age 53 as opposed to 43, and then what vehicle I'll be driving 63 or 73. Hopefully, when I retire, I want to drive a bus.
There you go.
Because I want to be the first positive face when students walk out of their house and onto a bus before they go to school. I want to know their name, and I want to get them excited for learning.
Man, and so what's interesting, what you said, it's something is like, doors will open. Getting people the skills and the confidence to step through a new open door. Just like you said, that might be meaning changing your vehicle, or, not changing yourself, but changing the vehicle that you're. So I think about that because that's something in my own life sometimes when a new opportunity is presented or a new door opens, maybe I haven't stepped through that door. Maybe because I didn't have the confidence. Maybe I was still a little bit too worried. Like you said, you got to take some risks. And so it all comes back to, how do we instill into people, students, people that we're working with, like, hey, a new opportunity produces itself. We're going to give you confidence that you're set up for success. You're going to be able to handle this. You're going to be able to go through there. You're going to be able to put your mark on it, step through that new door, and put your influences on whatever is on the other side of that door. I love how you said that. Those doors open. Let's get the confidence to step through there and try something new.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Gosh, Chris, if we could focus in on just how to further build confidence in others today, we might have to do a 2.0 podcast from the Weeklier explosion.
You could become we could have it could be a weekly residential type of thing. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, part 1, part 2, part 5. But anyway, well, we kind of covered a lot. Like you said, you kind of said, you got your story about what you got interested in leadership and strengths philosophy. It sounds like it's people that helped you get interested in that, and mentorship that got you to where you are today and helped you find your passion and what you want to do.
Yeah, no, it's cool, and I think stories resonate with people. And yet another cool K-State story about contribution, about being intentional, is really how strengths came to K-State's campus.
Yeah,
because we were utilizing strengths in Lead 212, Introduction to Leadership Concepts, and integrated it into our curriculum. And at the end of the semester, we'd assess, we'd evaluate it, and students said, out of all the things that we learned this semester, strengths mattered. And that's high praise, because we had Dr. Bosco come in and do his Boscology lecture, right?
Yep.
And strengths topped Dr. Bosco. And so we knew we had something special here. But then the idea was, well, if this works for leadership students, how do we get this across campus to every incoming student, undergrad, grad, international student? And it was Rich Missler. Rich Missler has a passion, and Rich Missler used to be a Blue Key member back in the day, and Rich has always wanted to invest in people. Mm-hmm. And so he was excited about this strengths initiative, and actually that year for Christmas, he had bought his entire family for Christmas the Strengths 2.0 book on identifying your top 5 strengths.
Yep.
And so it was a natural fit. Well, gosh, Rich gave the initial gift to then allow us as an institution to get strengths access codes out to all students free of charge.
Wow.
Because prior to that, it was part of their course fee in leadership studies,
Yep.
$12.50, buy a code, invest in your strengths. Well, now we've got a K-Stater who had a positive K-State experience saying, how can I give back to the next generation of college students, which reminds me of this leadership definition of generativity, finding your purposeful passion and giving back to the next generation to help them find their full potential. And Rich did that. And his family, through the Missler Family Foundation, recently endowed the Strengths Initiative here at K-State. And so now we've got the dollars to ensure that students every year until the end of time can continually invest in their strengths development. And so that's, one of those other awesome K-State stories. But I know we're going to talk about strengths. I know we're going to talk about engagement. I know we're going to talk about some well-being today.
Yeah.
But to kind of put it into context, Chris, there's a new book out from Gallup by Jim Clifton and Jim Harder, Well-Being at Work, How to Build Resilient and Thriving Teams.
Okay.
And I just want to read a couple of paragraphs here to kind of put it into context. What if the next global crisis is a mental health pandemic? It's here now. At this writing, the U.S. Census Bureau finds that a third of Americans are showing signs of clinical anxiety and depression. This is a huge jump from even before the COVID-19 pandemic. In a question about depressed mood and percentage of Americans who reported symptoms doubled from 2014. Gallup also found historic increases in stress and worry across our U.S. sampling frames. As anxiety and stress soar, so does hopelessness, too often followed by suicide, including deaths of despair, a new designation made prominent by Princeton economists Ann Cass and Nobel laureate Sir Angus Deaton. And so, gosh, as you hear that, right? As anxiety and stress soar, which as a health educator, I'd love to get into that conversation, so does hopelessness. And so if hopelessness is on the rise, how can we talk about what it means to instill hope, confidence, self-efficacy in others to combat the hopelessness feeling?
I think a lot, and this is just me, I think a lot of it is connectiveness. We've got to get people, and we've got to find ways to have students or people in the community feel connected to something, mainly the community. That is something I think that is healthy, and something that it gives people that purpose, that hope. And we'll talk more about that kind of stuff here a little bit later. But I think, and that's the hard part. Like I said, the global pandemic we're in right now, and hopefully coming out of, fingers crossed, we're going to have to do some assessment on how do we get people connected to something. Because I'll tell you a story that I have is, there's a student the first student when I started working here at K-State, that actually he came into our office. He's in our, the Lafine Student Health Group, the Wildcat Ambassadors. He came in, his name's Pranav, and Pranav came in, he sat down, and he was the first student that I really kind of picked his brain, like, hey, Pranav. And Pranav is an international student from India, and then the pandemic hits. I was here, I think I came in November, and then March, we know where everything went. And Pranav, he's an employee at Lafine Health Center, so he would come in every now and then, and we'd talk. But something that was really interesting, and something that I really took away from Pranav, when he got here to K-State, he had never stepped foot in Kansas at K-State until the day he got here to enroll and go to K-State. And he invested in kind of his social capital, I guess maybe is a good way to put it. When he got here, he really leaned in. He looked for opportunities to get connected. He went and he found some student groups. He went to the things the university provided for connective, the mixers or the getting together at the union and things of that nature. And he built this group of people, and by putting himself out there a little bit, being a little bit vulnerable too, because that can be a scary thing. And so then when this pandemic hit, when it came through, he wasn't starting from zero, if that makes sense. He had a network around him that he could draw from. And so that's something that I think I want like for people to model. I was like, Pranav, that's a great model for how to do it. Because if he had to start from zero, it would have been not that it wasn't a struggle for everybody, but starting from zero, if you didn't have that network already built and already invested in it beforehand, it would have made it 3 times harder for you. Maybe that's a conservative number too, but that's it. It's that connection piece. I think we've got to get people connected to the community, and a lot of the programming that we're putting in, that we're looking at doing, that's the number one thing we want to do, is how do we get people connected to the community? And I think nothing drives connectiveness more than caring and compassion for people that you're working with or working for. I think that, that's a long answer to the question that you just gave, but that connectedness thing, that's what I keep coming back to.
Yeah, no, gosh, absolutely. And I love that story of connection, especially, to then maybe overlay that with his top 5 strengths. So which of his strengths were at play as he actively sought out spaces of community?
Yeah.
Because then as you do different transitions in life, you've got your strengths, which then become agency to help you find different pathways to achieve goals. And that's cool stuff. Now, Chris, you also mentioned the pandemic, and I think, we wouldn't be doing our listeners any favor if we didn't share some of our initial stories as we pivoted during the pandemic, and now as more people are getting vaccinated and healthier communities. And as we come out of this pandemic. But I guess my question to you, and I'd be happy to share my story too, what was kind of that initial transition as you had to kind of reshape how you operated, how you worked?
When the pandemic, like I said, March kind of came around, and then people, I think a lot of people in my perspective was like, this will last a couple months. We'll work through it, and then here we are, 14, 15, 16 months later, and we're still having the pandemic with the precautions. And even though it's getting better with the vaccines and things of that nature, the pivot was really hard for me because, number one, and my coworkers laugh when I say this, I call it my folksy charm. Like, face-to-face with people is when I really thrive. If I'm face-to-face and talking to somebody and able to interact with you face-to-face, that's where I feel the most comfortable, And then we pivot to this where it's all going to be virtual. It's all going to be online. We do a lot of presentations, as a health educator around campus. And I'm doing these Zoom presentations, and I'm not able to read the room. I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable. The questions, maybe we're not, the back and forth isn't going quite what I wanted to. And so I got really frustrated with that. I thought, golly, this stinks. I don't know. I'm not doing my job. I'm not very good at my job right now. I'm doing nobody any, I shouldn't say any good, but I'm not giving the students, the community, what they need. I got to find a new way to do this, to get the stick so it drives home. And what really helped me with that was I kind of shared that with some of the colleagues around here at K-State. And people were like, yeah, we feel the same way. It has been very, very difficult. And then one faculty member said, just be honest with people. Let them know, like, when you're doing a presentation, let them know, like, hey, this is something, like, if it's virtual, I'd love to read the room. If you have any questions, but be open and be a little bit vulnerable with them and let them know what your worries are. And I did it a few times, and it's amazing the weight that comes off your shoulders with that. And so, but especially with the topic matter that I cover, I'm a social worker. I come in, I kind of specialize in mental health, and we need mental health awareness, stigma reduction, resources now more than ever. And so then there's pressure applied to myself. Like, I've got to do something right now so that we can get this stuff to the students and they know what's going on. And I struggled with it for a while. And, like I said, just because I was worried that my passion wasn't shining through, it wasn't being shown. And so, it got better. I still don't feel the most comfortable, but anyway, I'll be really happy when we get back to, like, hopefully next semester we'll have some in-person stuff where we can go out and see people and talk to them. But that was a struggle that I had with the pivot going to COVID-19 or due to the pandemic and doing a lot of stuff virtually.
Yeah, gosh, Chris, number one, thanks for sharing that story. I believe stories are gifts, and so thanks for sharing that story with me. Gosh, there's so much to unpack in that element, right? Your authenticity, and when you finally said, hey, I'm just going to show up and be Chris, the authenticity, also the vulnerability. I'm a big fan of Brené Brown. And I'm a big fan of, team building and leadership. And so high ability, high performing teams have one thing in common, and that's trust. And so then all of a sudden, if trust is central to high ability, high performing teams, as a leadership educator, I'm always thinking, well, what's the strategy? What's the framework to help further establish trust? And it's vulnerability. And if you can then create these spaces, these vulnerable moments, like you so eloquently shared in your conversation with your colleagues, to say, hey, I'm not at my best right now. That's a powerful place to then drive company, corporate culture. So then we can thrive.
Well, and I think about it too. Like I said, when I came on, when I'm working here, I've got there is the agency mission that we're working towards, but also each of us have our own personal motivations and kind of mission statements that we hold with ourselves. And mine was, the mental health piece, being a social worker. I got to get out there. I need to help people. And with the pivot, it became so much about the pandemic and COVID-19 at our student health center at Lafine. And so we started doing these vaccination clinics, and I was talking to my director, Jim Parker, kind of about these vaccination clinics and how they're going. And our team did a great job. I mean, the efficiency that they had with these was phenomenal. And in the conversation I had with my director, Jim, he just, it kind of came to the realization that, how am I going to take, like, one of mine is positivity, I may not be, how can I make that positivity work in any situation that I am in? So we're at these COVID clinics, a friendly hello, a talk to people, being friendly, being upbeat, being positive. It wasn't directly mental health related that I was trying to instill in people, but that mental health piece came through, that optimism. It helped drive optimism. And so, like I said, finding a way to incorporate myself into whatever it is that I'm doing, what my core beliefs, values, and all that is, and figuring out a way to get that into, again, I keep saying it, but that passion shines through when you're being yourself, and people pick up on it and they're receptive to it. And that's just a great feeling to have when you see somebody that's receptive to what you're saying, and you feel good, they feel good. And that's the power of that connection with the people.
Yeah. Well, gosh, story, right?
Yeah.
Because it was the vaccination clinic after my double vaccination where you and I were able to connect as I was waiting my 15 minutes to get the okay to move about my day. Gosh, the work that you, your team here at Lafine have had a chance to do under Jim's leadership, wow, like really, really special. You've all stabilized, I think, a lot for the K-State community in terms of COVID protocol, and you've been a leader not just here on campus, but through the NCAA. It's been really cool to see all the talent here at Lafine and how that's helped our entire K-State community.
It's that trust piece too that you brought up, with the trust within a team, with the trust for the leadership. I think when I think of like the pandemic and what we've done here at Lafine with the vaccination clinics and whatever it is we're doing pandemic related, there was trust in our leadership that they're going to push us, but they're not going to try to give us more than we can handle. But we're gonna ask a lot of you, but also that trust that there's going to be a check-in point where they're going to come around and say, hey, how are you doing? How's your team doing? And then it gets into how's your family doing? How's everything else going? And so that trust piece with leadership is huge. I love I like the fact that you put that. I mean, obviously, but you brought that up because trust in leadership. If you trust your leadership, it's amazing what can be accomplished sometimes.
Yeah, and gosh, that supports the research that we know from Gallup. What do leaders need to do during times of significant change, transition, crisis?
Yep.
It kind of comes down to these four elements, and number one is compassion.
Yep.
How can we be reminded of what compassion means as well-intended people are making decisions that maybe they've never, ever had to make before?
Yep.
And how can we show compassion for the decision-making process, for how that's impacting real people in everyday life? So number one was compassion. Number two is stability. Mm-hmm. Because in all this new flux, change, transition, remote working, my gosh, how can we get back to just some sort of normal way of operating, getting people back to work, getting people set up? I will never forget how awesome Leadership Studies was through the leadership of Dr. Mary Toller to get us all the resources we needed to set up shop at home. So we didn't have to come into the office. I mean, we couldn't come into the office.
Yeah.
But they were quick in trying to stabilize our work environment by allowing us to bring all of our technology home to where we had some sort of space to even operate and work.
How do you create stability when the situation isn't the most stable? The pandemic, everything's changing so it was so fluid, and so how do you create stability when the situation you're in is not the most stable? And I think you answered it right there. You communicate, you find out what your team needs, you find out what people need, and then you do what you can to get them what they need to be successful. That creates stability.
The number one skill set that you mentioned when I talked about your motivational interviewing, you said, Mike, active listening.
Yep.
And when leaders are in a place to actively listen to what their employees need to thrive,
yep,
then we can start to find some stability. And then number 3 of that of the element around change and transition is trustworthiness.
Yep.
Establishing trust, which we've already really talked about, to where leaders are saying, here are the challenges that face us. Here are the decisions we have to make, and being transparent in that process to build trust. And then last but not least, and I think this is where sometimes we get so wrapped up in the moment of what we're experiencing in our current reality that we forget to future cast and remind people of the power of hope. Because we've also got to create a new pathway forward that's hopeful, right? Especially knowing that the research says many people are feeling hopeless. So how can we instill in others this element of hope? And Dr. Shane Lopez, he would define hope as tomorrow will be better than today. And number 2, I have the power to make it so. And when I think about that definition, it's so powerful, and it gets me unstuck. If I'm having a bad day, I can say tomorrow will be better than today. And number 2, I have the power to make it so. Well, where's that power come from? Where does that agency come from? It comes, at least for me personally, it comes from understanding my 5 talents that then I've turned into strengths over time. And then how can I leverage my woo, communication, positivity, adaptability, and maximizer to find a new pathway forward towards goal attainment? And so that's when I kind of see this whole hope cycle come into play, that yes, I have the power to make tomorrow better than today. And it gets me back to this narrative. I'll never forget, you shared your story about the transitioning into the pandemic. I'll never forget a call with one of my students who I respect just immensely, Gabe Mitchell. And Gabe and I were talking. At the time, he was an RA here on campus. And he said, we were basically speaking to loss. And he said, Mike, I just wish I could have closure with my students. But as an RA, we can't be connected with our students. We're all at home. And I feel as though I've lost that sense of community, which, gosh, you highlighted is a hallmark to where people feel connected. And Gabe kept saying, I wish. And I, too, I was saying it right along with Gabe. I wish I could be back in large lecture. I wish I didn't have to navigate YouTube video channels. And now I did become real proficient at leveraging technology. But I wished I could be face-to-face. And then Gabe and I stumbled on this idea and this notion, and I challenged Gabe. I said, Gabe, every time you say I wish, could you change that to I will? Because if you say I will still connect with my students, maybe not in the same way, but how can we still reach out and do something as opposed to just wishing? Then we can start to create strategies based on our talents and move forward to a more productive day, more productive conversation.
Yeah, no, I think, I'm trying to, I'm processing, that hope piece. Giving people hope, like, tomorrow will be better than today, and I have the power to change that. Kind of thinking about, like, you shared how, where you, like I said, when you're having a bad day, where it comes from. For me, like I said, the hope and the optimism and things like that, a lot of that comes from, I do a lot of journaling. I write a lot of stuff down. And it's amazing when you can learn. For me, it was somebody kind of gave me the idea, and this is just personal to me, but how to use that journaling, that writing as a tool for myself to help create hope. Because we can go back and look through, I can go back and look through when I've written stuff down or journaled stuff, hard times that I've went through. But then I can also see, okay, you know what? I made it through that. And this is not always the same, but I usually get myself a good starting point. And so that instills hope with me that tomorrow, and that gives me the power that I'm going to make it better. And it's, I can do that. It gives me confidence again. I think that's a lot. I always go back a lot to confidence, giving people confidence, to take on situations, take on things that come up. If you have the confidence to do it, I think you can do amazing things. You can do great things.
Yeah, gosh, here comes another goosebump moment, right? We've talked about hope, we've talked about confidence, which in academic terms, lots of times we use the word efficacy to mean confidence. And so it reminds me of some of the research around positive psychology around hero. How can we be our own hero to move forward? And I cautiously say hero because I'm also a leadership instructor. And so I never want to highlight that there's any one hero that can create significant change or transformation, right? It's a collaborative experience. So there's not ever one person. Hence why lots of times when I talk about leadership, I talk about it as exercising leadership as opposed to the leader.
Yep.
Because exercising leadership enables anybody in the system to find themselves intentionally engaged in the change process.
Yep. As
opposed to just leader. Gosh, that's a noun, and that's one person to do the work of many. And so, I'll digress, but we get back to this hero concept, and it's an acronym that then stands for hope, efficacy, resiliency, and optimism. And if we can instill this hero mentality in our students to really consciously think about hope, about efficacy, about resiliency, and about optimism, I would think that then they've at least got a strong foundation to tackle the challenges that we haven't yet seen or will have to navigate in our professional and personal lives.
So a question for you, Mike, is so this hero, what have you found that has been successful for you, or something you've been trying to instill this into students? You know, the hero model, or not the model, but you know, the term hero. What have you found? Because this is something that sometimes I think people, including myself, struggle with. You know, we want to find the most relevant, effective ways to give students information so that they can use it. So I'm using this as a learning opportunity from you, no pressure. But you know, what are some things that you've done that you found that reach students, that they receive, I guess is the best way to put it.
You bet. Breaking down the 4 elements of hope, self-efficacy, optimism, and resiliency, and trying to give some stories and or some narratives behind it, right?
Yep.
Because I think sometimes in the classroom we can get tied up in the definition. I'll give you an example. And you do a lot of work around resiliency. Well, this definition of resiliency comes from Luthans and Avolio, but to define resiliency, a positive way of coping with danger or distress. In an organizational aspect, it's defined as an ability to recuperate from stress, conflict, failure, change, or increase in responsibility. Well, that's a mouthful.
Yeah.
And I was reminded by a good friend and colleague of mine through the Snyder Leadership Legacy Fellows Initiative for K-State students as they transition from college to career.
Yeah.
Jaime Mendez, K-State football player in the K-State Ring of Honor. Jaime Mendez said, "Mike, I know a lot about resiliency. When I was on the football field, I got knocked down a lot.
Yep.
But the one thing I was good at, I'd get back up."
Yep.
And he goes, through life, I learned what it meant to be resilient in my personal life, in my professional life, because of all the times I got knocked down. I willed myself to get back up.
Yep.
And if I just get back up, then all of a sudden I can fight yet another day. And I love that kind of metaphor of no matter what life throws at you, how can we create the agency to get back up, ask for help? I think that's another key component, right? Community. You've got to be surrounded by a community of people that care and are willing to invest in you. But you've also got to be willing to ask for help. And here's what I tell my students all the time, because a lot of my students will say, I say yes and I love to help others, but I'm reluctant to help other people. Or not help other people. I'm reluctant to ask for help myself.
Yep.
And I say, well, why is that? And their response is, well, I know people are busy.
Yep.
I'm busy. I'm stressed. I'm overwhelmed. So I don't want to project additional stress or a feeling of people being overwhelmed or a burden to somebody else, because I'm asking for help that I need right now.
Yep.
And so then I flipped the script. And I said, well, when have you ever been upset when one of your friends that you care about came to you and asked for your help?
Yep.
And they're like, never. I'm always happy to show up.
Yeah.
And so then I'll say, well, then why, by the fact that you're not willing to ask for help yourself, why are you preventing one of your good friends that opportunity to feel good about helping you?
Yep. You hit it. That feel good. You know, I find myself, and I know a lot of my friends and my family especially, we've talked about when you are able to help somebody. This is a goosebump moment again. When you are able to help somebody, that's a feeling that's hard to recreate besides helping somebody, if that makes sense. There's that feeling, you just feel so good when you can help somebody. And I want, like I said, that's a point to try to, or that's what I want to try to unlock is how do we show people that feeling so that they want to keep doing it, you know? And that's where I think people working with people or people that work with people for a living, they know that feeling and they know they want to have more of it. And like I said, it's just like I said, that feeling you get from helping people. It is an amazing feeling that's so hard to recreate with anything else.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Well, absolutely. And so in my senior seminar class, lots of times we talk about altruism and self-interest, right? And is there truly any kind of altruistic act? Because if I help you, I'm, yes, helping you out of the kindness of my heart, but yet I still benefit from that because I then feel good about myself. Hey, I was able to help Chris out and life is good.
And it's contagious. Yeah. I find it's contagious that, you know, you then, like I said, just has you look for more opportunities to help, especially if, so that could be a whole nother, like I said, a whole nother 4-hour podcast that we could tackle. But yeah, I think, like I said, that feeling you get from helping others, it's hard to recreate.
You know, I'm also reminded I need to kind of pause and reflect a little bit on our conversation that we've already been having. You and I both share the strength of positivity.
Yep.
And I'm hoping that our listeners are getting energized as much as you and I are in this back and forth. When was it that you first connected with your strength of positivity?
First time I connected with my strength of positivity. Gosh darn, that's trying to think way back. I've always, like I said, I think back. I've always had a positive outlook, and I think the reason that I really want to be a positive person is I always saw it could set you apart a little bit, you know, from a lot of other people. But now I get out there, there's, you know, many, many positive people. But that positivity, it can set you apart. It can make you a little bit unique. You know, it can motivate and energize other people, just like what we're talking about. And so I go back, you know, I do go back to, I played a lot of high school sports, things of that nature. And the positivity during practice when, you know, now granted this is small 1A high school football, but you're doing 2-a-days, you know, at 5:00 in the morning. And then in the August heat after school, stuff like that, when people are getting down, people are looking to give up, or people are thinking, man, this is going to be too hard. I don't know if I can do this. You interject some genuine positivity. That's the thing is, it's got to be genuine positivity. It can lift others. And I go back to high school sports during those practice sessions where it's like, okay, let's bring some positivity into this. And one, I think this is before I knew it was in my strengths. One, I saw it making an effective leader, you know. Positivity in my mind is like, I can be this. This is something that I can bring as a leader in a leadership role. And so I think that's kind of where it formed, like I said, was, and it was effective. Like I said, that genuine positivity is a thing, you know, like you can't, in my mind, it's hard to just be positive in one section and people see it as being genuinely positive. You got to have it throughout your whole life. And so I think that's kind of where my first thoughts of before I even knew it was one of my strengths, before I knew anything about this, you know, we're talking sophomore, junior in high school, senior in high school, but still able to pick up on, hey, this positivity can motivate and get people through a hard time.
Yeah.
And that kind of drove, you know, and then I think about, gosh, now I'm really getting reminiscent and thinking back, my going into social work, the social work program here at K-State, getting into it, that positivity piece, because, you know, I've worked on teams where we had a lot of heavy subject matter. You know, for 6 years, I did child abuse and neglect investigations for the state of Kansas, and everybody in my team, we were all dealing with the same subject matter, and it can get pretty heavy sometimes. You bring that positivity in, that genuine positivity. Maybe not about the subject, because sometimes it's hard to find about that subject that you're working in, but the positivity of us as a team, that they have somebody they can count on, that I have a brother or sister in this room that I can count on. That's a positivity that you try to bring in, that I would try to bring in. And I had a great leader, a great mentor, Rob McDougall. He also graduated from K-State social work program. He was a retired warrant officer in the Army. He brought that in, and he recognized that in me, and he's like, that's fantastic. Keep doing that. That's what our team needs. And so that's when positivity, I mean, it helps, sometimes can help people get through some difficult times, whether it's football practice or just like you shared the story about, you know, you come home from work and there was a fatality. or when you're working with such heavy subject matter that something happened completely out of your control and it's really, really devastating or it's really sad, you got to be careful with that positivity going in and they, hey, I'm here for you. We can get through this and things of that nature. So that's when I think it kind of came about for me.
Yeah. And, I'm also fascinated. When we started this off today, we also talked a little bit about strengths envy.
Yep.
And so I've always been envious of people that have empathy.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's fascinating because how do you balance your positivity strength with then also showing up when to really leverage your empathy strength? Because depending on context or situation, people might need different things from you.
I think it comes back. It's another strength of mine, communication. I think about, empathy. A lot of times people have a definition of empathy, like walk a mile in someone else's shoes or being able to see something from someone else's point of view. And that's true. That is part of empathy. But I think empathy, for me, it can be tricky because I might be at some people, or I've done it myself. I'm empathetic to somebody. I see something they're going through. I put myself in their situation. My mind automatically goes to, hey, you know what? I've been through a similar situation. This is how I got through it. I want to grab that person, pull them over to me and say, okay, follow me. I have the roadmap. I've got the blueprint. Let's do it. But then the communication strength, which works in there, to be able to sit down, communicate with that person and not necessarily, and get their point of view, get their perspective, get the information from them. Because, communication isn't just me talking. It's the listening piece, active listening, all that kind of stuff. But with the empathy piece, the hard part for me that I had to really work on with empathy is I'm not going to grab that person and say, hey, this is the way we do it. I've been through it. I see your point of view. It stinks. Let's get through it. This is how we do it. Letting that person develop their own roadmap, their own blueprint, and you being there to just be there, I guess. That's your role as for me when I'm with the empathetic listener. Just showing empathy is I want to be there for that person, just so they don't feel alone, and then I want to be there for that person to not necessarily tell them what to do, but for them to bounce ideas off of, or for them to talk to, for me to be there to help them process things. And so it's kind of interesting how a lot of the strengths come into what you just asked about, that positivity with that empathy, and I've never even thought about it this way, but it is, there is a way you got to interweave them in together so that they're genuine. That's the thing.
Gosh, Chris, I can't wait to play this back to all my students, because what you just highlighted right there is that magical moment where if we're really invested in developing a leadership capacity to exist in others, we're going to stop giving advice and we're going to start coaching.
Yep.
And that coaching, that listening, asking people critical questions to let them define their own roadmap for success. Mm-hmm. And you so eloquently shared that it's not about you, but it's about them, and then helping them build their roadmap to success, which could look completely different as a blueprint from your roadmap to success.
Exactly. And sometimes the hard part is, which with, like I said, the being empathetic, and being like, okay, you're going through this. I see your point of view. I'm going to grab you and pull you, and you're going to follow me. I'm going to show you. That all originates from a good place. Yeah. It all originates from a good place.
It does.
But that's the important part to remember too. That's what I tell people, you've shown that you have the beginnings of developing a very empathetic way, I guess. And so that's one thing I really tell people is like, I'm not saying that what you're doing is wrong, because it is coming from a good place. That you're genuinely invested in this person and wanting to help them. That's good. That's a fantastic thing. That is the beginning step. And so that's where my mind goes, where I think about, it all comes from a good place, and that's the positivity. It's coming from a good place.
Yeah. And, from a leadership context, I'm reminded of these two sentences. Mm-hmm. I exercise leadership for others versus I exercise leadership with others. Mm-hmm. For comes from a great place. Yeah. But if we really dissect exercise leadership for others, it comes from a deficit-based perspective. Yeah. If I say, hey, I'm going to do something for Chris, the potential exists for me to explore the idea that Chris is in help. He needs my assistance. I have power. I have agency. Chris has none. And so I'm going to step in and do something for Chris. Yeah. But yet if I say I'm going to do something with Chris, then all of a sudden I approach that challenge. Chris is whole. creative, and Chris has agency to overcome whatever obstacle he's facing right now, whether that be professionally or personally, and we're going to work collaboratively together to find some sort of resolution.
Yep.
And so, I lots of times think, with all of our K-State students exercising leadership in powerful ways, how many times do they get trapped in that narrative of, I'm going to do this for my fraternity.
Yep.
I'm going to do this for my student organization. I'm going to do this for others. Mm-hmm. And what would it look like if they had a transformative shift to move from for to with and say, wait a second, I'm the recruitment chair for my fraternity. I'm going to do this with my members. Yep. And then in the process of with, they're helping develop a capacity for leadership to exist as they graduate and transition out.
Yep.
And I think that's the critical component when we start to say my leadership exists to develop a capacity in others. That's a transformative moment in life.
Does that go in with the generativity?
Oh, yeah. Chris, that's absolutely, I'm all excited about the leader identity development model that talks about awareness, exploration, leader identified, leadership differentiated. Leadership identified versus leadership differentiated. That's a pivotal point in that leader identity model, because it talks about, I identify that other people are exercising leadership and might have titles that go with their behaviors and positions of doing work in an organization, but they don't necessarily see themselves as a leader.
Yeah.
And then when they move from leader identified, people are exercising leadership, to leadership differentiated. Yes, people are exercising leadership, and I too, regardless of title, can be exercising leadership at the same pace that they are.
Yeah.
Regardless of authority.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a powerful place. It gets back to that notion of if not you, who?
Yeah.
If not now, when?
Yeah.
Right? Like call ourselves into action for anything that we observe or see to then intervene to make the world and the community a better place. And so that's stage 3 and 4. And then stage 5 is generativity, which is defined as people finding their purposeful passion. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the other element. Lots of times students will say, well, Mike, I want to exercise leadership. Well, before you exercise leadership, let's jump back. What are your values? Mm-hmm. What are your strengths? What are your passions and interests? And if we think about our values in a circle, and yet our strengths in yet another circle, and then our passions and interests in yet another circle, now all of a sudden we've created this Venn diagram.
Yep.
And then we can start to see the relationships between our values and our strengths and our passions and interests. And then we can start to, I think, answer that big, heavy question of, what does the world require of me? Mm-hmm. And maybe it's not what does the world require of me. It's what does my partner require of me? What does my children require of me? What does my colleagues, what do they require of me? Well, they require you to understand your values, play to your strengths, and live out your passions and interests, because if you do that, then you are in a healthy, productive environment. And one thing we know from Gallup's research, strengths are only strengths if lived out in a healthy, productive environment. Yep. So then people that are more self-aware, which is a key element of authenticity, self-awareness, people who are self-aware can start to create the conditions to play to their strengths more often than not, which on a simple story, right? Way back in the day when you and I were here at K-State.
Yep.
Remember, they did not have any kind of cap as to how many credits you could enroll in. Mm-hmm. There wasn't like a registration fee. You just enroll in your classes, and then if you're actually enrolled at the 20th day list, you get billed, and away you go. I remember I would enroll in 18 to 21 hours every semester. Mm-hmm. And for the first 2 weeks of class, I would go to all 18 or 21 hours, knowing full well I couldn't handle 18 to 21 hours. But then I would go, I'd listen to the faculty member, I'd see what kind of lecture space we were in. Is this a large lecture? Is it small group? What's the syllabus look like? And then I'd make decisions based on my strengths. And at the time, I didn't know my strengths, like Clifton Strengths Finder has allowed students these days to. But I'd then say, what classes do I need to drop out of to then find my 15 credit hour semester? So it was basically taking 2 weeks to kind of pilot, where did I feel the most engaged? And lots of times, Chris, I wouldn't drop the class that I thought was going to be the most rigorous or the most difficult, but I'd drop the class where I'd look around and think, I don't see a whole lot of other students here that really seem excited about being in this class, and so I don't think I'm going to have a lot of support.
Yeah.
Whether it's easy or not, I'm going to drop that class and jump into this rigorous course because I see that the faculty member cares.
Yeah.
They're connected, and they made an intentional decision to help build a community in the classroom so we could all be successful.
It goes back, like what you're saying is authenticity. You know, when you're operating in those three realms and you're being authentic to yourself, then that is when you thrive. You know, I mean, it's what through this whole thing we talk about. You know, we had a little pre-production meeting. Everything just ties together. You know, all the concepts we talk about, they all tie together. Like I said, so I don't want to say seamlessly because it probably hasn't seemed seamless as we were talking, but it all comes back to it. Like, and I think that's, you know, when we talk about authenticity and being authentic and things of that nature, you're the most authentic to yourself when you're operating in those three areas you just mentioned, and you're true to yourself. And that's when you feel comfortable. And I know when I feel comfortable, that's when I'm doing my best work at whatever it is that I'm doing.
Yeah, gosh, talking about authenticity, right? I'm reminded of Bill George, author of True North. And Bill George talks about being your authentic self. And he says, if we keep hiring people for their charisma, for their style, and their image, why would we be upset 6 months later when they're on the job and we don't have character, substance, or integrity?
Yep.
That's a powerful element, right?
Yep.
And so I think sometimes our students get wrapped up with the charisma, the style, the image. Hey, gosh, I'm going to sign up to be a leadership studies minor because it's going to look great on my resume. Well, that's all style.
Yep.
But if you then worked through all 4 core courses and you can't articulate and really talk about with significant substance what you learned in those courses, then you haven't done the necessary work to really prepare to put yourself and others in a position for success.
I hear that word substance, and that just comes back, you know, because when you find somebody or you work with somebody or you meet somebody that maybe has the charisma and thing and all that, but then they also have substance to it. You're just, like I said, you're for me personally, I'm like, I need to get to know this person. I need to pick their brain. I need to learn from this person. You know, it's, you know, and I think when I can't tell you how when I meet somebody that has the charisma and things, but they also have the integrity, the substance, and then it's like, holy cow, this is somebody we need to learn from. And so, I'm thinking, I'm just running through my head some of the people that I've met that I'm like, these are people that got it. I need to get around these people, and I need to learn from them. I need to ask them questions because in the back of my mind, I know they're going to learn from me too, you know, and it's that give, take, that back and forth that makes it so free-flowing and feel so good.
Yeah. Gosh, we're all teachers, leaders, and learners.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly.
And I think the minute that we start to get excited about, say, a titled position or a position of authority to say, gosh, I've got power, I've got responsibility to make decisions, and we stop learning from people on all levels of the organization, then we find ourselves, I think, in a place for disaster.
Yeah. The potential's there for something to go south or to go wrong. But, this, like I said, it just all ties together. Like I said, it all comes together, and it's a journey, I think. You know, I don't think anybody's, like I said, we talk about authenticity, we talk about your strengths, we talk about generativity. Those aren't easy things to come by a lot of times. You know, you've got to work for it too. You know, you got to understand what it is. You got to, you know, and so I think that's what, like, leadership studies and with your passion and with your staff that you have over at the leadership at Staley School Leadership, you guys are doing a great job letting people know that we're going to work for this, but here's the end goal. Like, here's what you can expect to be if you invest in this program.
Yeah.
And that's what you want.
And the end goal is to increase engagement and overall well-being. Because if we've got strategies to be engaged, right, I'm always reminded, keep your mind where your feet are. Right? If I can keep my mind where my feet are, if it was important enough for me to walk into that physical space, then I want to be there, I want to be engaged, and I want to contribute in meaningful ways.
Yeah.
But how many times, gosh, undergrad, you know, we walked into the classroom, we were physically there, but our mind was somewhere else, right? I think the powers that be that I actually had enough clout to take that collegian down and listen to Lieutenant Q from the Riley County Police Department, because in that moment, it it was one of those critical questions, those crossroads in life. What's next for Mike Finnegan? And we all reach those crossroads. But I think what helped me make that decision, do I go into law enforcement or do I find another pathway? It was then connecting back to my strengths. What are my talents? And how do I see my talents play out in these different environments? And I think our talents, our values can really help drive the decisions that we that we make. But we've got to put in the time, energy, and effort to do the self-awareness work.
Exactly. You know, in those pivotal, you shared your story with the pivotal moment. I still remember school. I think about it. College for me as an undergrad didn't make sense all the time. I don't know. You know, I'm taking these classes and you know, I didn't have that passion. You know, I was going to college because that's what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to go to college. I worked my way through a community college, came to K-State just because, you know, I didn't know that was what I was supposed to do. And I remember when everything clicked and made sense for me was when I got into the social work program, or I started taking classes with the social work program. And it was all my sister, she was taking a psychology course. She was going to Fort Hays State at the time. She was taking a couple courses for social work and things of that nature. And so I kind of flipped through the books and I was like, you know, this could be something. You know, number one, I can barely subtract. Okay. The hard sciences, math, that stuff was out of there. I was like, I can't do this. And so I was kind of searching, and then I started looking at the social work stuff. I was like, you know, it's connecting with people. It's working with people. And I thought, you know, I'm a people person, you know, so maybe. And so I remember I sat down, and one of the first courses I took was social welfare with Dr. Betsy Cobble, and she's retired from K-State.
Yeah, and former department head.
She was a department head, and I remember I sat down and took social welfare with Dr. Cobble, and the way I still remember the textbook. I still have the textbook and read it. The way she laid it all out, I was like, holy cow! Instantly, college made sense. You know, it made sense. And then I had this appreciation for the hard work I did to get to that point, because it wasn't easy for me personally. I had to work really hard to make it. But then when I hit it, I was able to reflect, like, you know what, that hard work, now it makes sense. I'm glad I did that to get to this point. And then I guess I could say the rest is history. I've been in social work my entire career, and I enjoy it. I love it. I love working with people. I love helping people. But anyway, so like I said, that was mine, was two things. Accidentally picking up a textbook when I wasn't in school. That was my sister's. I don't know why I did that, because that really wasn't my style. And then finding that person or that class that connected. And like I said, it was a moment where it's like, okay, this makes sense now. This is what I'm going to do. And I'm lucky that I had that moment, you know, because people can have those. And while I was still going to K-State, people can have those moments even after they get a 1 degree and they're out in the workforce. They can have those moments too and have to come back. But I always say, just follow that passion. Try to find out what it is that you want to do.
Chris, you know, we've talked a lot about trying to create hope in others. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the way that you described your undergraduate experience is that there were times you were walking to class maybe and going to class, but maybe a little hopeless. Like, what am I doing here? What's the greater purpose? And it was Betsy Cobble that then put it all into perspective for you. And, you know, just think about the many names that you and I have both shared that have influenced our lives in positive ways, right? Dr. Pat Bosco. We've both got a Dr. Pat Bosco story. Dr. Mary Kay Seifers, Susan Scott from myself, to name a couple. I think we talked about Jaime Mendez, Frank Hernandez, but you know, when we think about transformational leadership, I always ask my students, if you really want to be exceptional in the work that you do, learn from those who have transformed you in positive ways. And then what can you learn from them? And so we actually ask students, hey, write down who's been a transformational leader in your life. And then all the concepts that we bring to light in the classroom, they can see through the lens of their mentors. And then the end question, right, to end that lecture on transformational leadership is 10 years from now, when I ask others who's been transformational in their life, who's going to write down your name? Because that's really what we're after. Yes, people have poured into us in meaningful ways that have been transformational. But in what ways have we then committed to mentor, educate, coach others who would say, you know what, Mike Finnegan and Chris Bowman, those are two guys that have been transformational in my life during my time at K-State. And then we get into this awesome, space where our students become friends. And they become lifelong friends after they graduate. I constantly think of, students that I had so much respect and admiration for in the classroom. Yeah. And then through a continued life mentorship, they were in my class for a season. But my gosh, now the relationship has extended beyond for years and years and years. And I think of Taylor Schmidt. I think of Mitchell Lowry. I think of Kristen O'Shea, who's now a Topeka state senator and doing strengths work. Yeah. I think of Ryan Patterson. The list goes on and on and on of students who've had a significant influence and impact in my life. And they might be saying, no, wait a second, it was Mike that impacted. I'll never forget when I first started teaching. Katie Friesen, she was in Introduction to Leadership Concepts class. And we did a 16-week semester. She was an engaged student. She participated. But then it was that summer, she actually was reading a Harry Potter book. And she's like, Mike, Harry Potter talks about all the leadership concepts that we talked about in class. And Chris, I kid you not, she sent me this long, 2 or 3 page email talking all about Harry Potter and basically brought all the concepts to life. And I was just like, whoa, this is great. I don't know anything about Harry Potter. I've never read a book, but that is awesome. Yeah. And now Katie's a doctor. She just recently got her PhD, and she too is a leadership educator. And it's just so cool to learn from our students.
No, like I said, call comes full circle. And that's another feeling, that's what you work for. Just like you said, when someone who's going to write down Mike Finnegan or Chris Bowman as someone, and I keep going back to it, but that's where being authentic to yourself. You never know what interaction you're going to have with somebody is going to start that relationship or ignite that flame in that person. Like, this is somebody that and now, granted, everybody has their bad days, but you never know when someone's going to be like, you know what, this person's going to motivate me to do this. You never know when you're going to have an impact on somebody. Because like you said, the officer that came into your criminal studies, he wasn't thinking, I'm going to influence Mike Finnegan today. Yeah. I'm going to drop some knowledge on him that's going to make him really think. He didn't have that, but he was operating in a space where he was feeling if it was himself, he was authentic with himself, and then that instantly got you to start thinking, okay, what can I do? What do I need to do?
Chris, gosh, that just kind of hit me in the chest on that one. I have never reached back out to Lieutenant Q. Like, I've told this story, I think, for years and years and years, as one of my crossroad pivotal moments where I identified one of my strengths as positivity and then made kind of a career switch, in my formidable years. I have never thanked him for showing up to that lecture. And he has probably no idea as to how that then set me on a trajectory into higher ed. I need to thank Lieutenant Q. And I guess this is also a challenge to all of our listeners to really kind of explore who's been transformational in your life, who have been the people that have created high hope for you. Yep. And then what you were able to turn in and do with it. And then how could we maybe go back and give thanks to the people that kind of taught us those lessons?
Exactly. No, it's, and when this podcast episode reaches its, worldly fame, Lieutenant Q may, I'm just kidding. But no, again, that's the thing. It's that power of connection. And then, I don't know about you. I know for myself, when someone reaches out and says, hey, thank you for what you've done. This is how it's impacted my life in a positive way. Again, it's those feels that you get. You're like, man, it helps build hope. It helps think, okay, we're doing something good here, and it motivates. And I think that's highly important.
Yeah.
So, well, we've kind of been all over the map. We've covered a lot of stuff. It's been a lot of fun, though. I mean, just sharing stories, like you said, that's a connection piece. Is stories, real life stuff that's happened. I think can connect with a lot of people.
Yeah, we have been kind of all over the map. How long have we been going at this?
We've been at it just about an hour and 40 minutes.
No way.
Yeah.
No way. It feels like we just sat down like 30 minutes ago.
I know. And so, that's a good sign, though. That's when the communication is flowing.
Hey, I'm going to have to send this out to all my students who live in Johnson County, right? And be like, hey, you got 2 hours to move from Johnson County back to Manhattan to get excited for K-State. And I got a great podcast from myself and Chris that we'll just kind of talk your ear off. And before you know it, you'll be from Kansas City to Manhattan, ready to rock and roll.
Exactly. Nope. What's really interesting, like I said, I love podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts. And I thought it was just something, hey, I'm the older person that loves podcasts, but connecting with students, love them too, and it's been fun just to listen to people say, yeah, well, that's really cool. There's a podcast, and then because podcasting has become a topic conversation that I connect with students with. Mm-hmm. What podcast do you listen to? They tell me, I tell them, and then, hey, you know what? I'm going to go check that one out. And they're like, I'll check the one out that you listen to. And it's been a good way to connect. It's, because number one, I don't know anything about Instagram and social media. So I got to find something else to get in with the students and talk. And podcasting's been one of them. So.
Hey, Chris, because I love the connection around podcasts. This is a question I've been asking a lot of my students because we always end up with hey, how are you doing today? Yep. Right? And then you get a canned answer and a response. So I'm always trying to kind of mix it up a little bit. And I know that you love music.
Yep.
It's part of your passion.
It is.
And so let me try to kind of reach into your soul here and ask this question for you. If you were singing a song to the world today, mm-hmm. what song would you be singing and why?
So the song I would be singing, this is a complicated answer. Maybe not so complicated. It's complicated in my head. Is I Won't Back Down, Tom Petty. But also Tom Petty and Johnny Cash also teamed up and did a version of it. And it's I Won't Back Down by Tom Petty, who wrote it. But I love the Johnny Cash version where they teamed up and did it too. And it's got a couple of layers. Number one, my father was a huge Johnny Cash fan. My father played bluegrass, gospel music our entire life. Music was part of his soul. That's what he did. And he loved Johnny Cash. And so just taking into what the title of the song, I Won't Back Down. I think there's a part in there that says, you can stand me up at the gates of hell, but I won't back down. Everybody's gates of hell, so to say, is different. Everybody's going to stand somewhere else. But it's, now I've lost my train of thought. But what it is there are better times ahead. That whole thing with hope. And how can we get people to that hope? How do you not back down? And so there's that mantra to it. I want to find a way to not back down. And that may be connecting with somebody. And two, like I said, it's in my soul with my father, who passed away in this September. And that was one of the songs we played at his funeral was I Won't Back Down. And a lot of people said, that fits because it's resiliency is what it is. It's preaching a little bit of resiliency, but it also is giving hope, optimism, all that kind of stuff. So that would be the song that I would want people. I Won't Back Down. Tom Petty and the Johnny Cash version also that I would say that I would want to broadcast to the world.
Wow. Gosh, that's awesome. Yeah. That's cool. And so fitting for somebody that does health education and resiliency work mm-hmm. and motivational interviewing. I love it.
No. So that's where we got to get to, where I want to get to. I want to do a couple, I call them quick hitter questions for you, Mike.
You bet.
I want to get to, I want, man, maybe people know this a little bit, okay? But maybe you're going to drop some knowledge that not a lot of people know. But I want to figure out what some of your favorite things are, okay? We do this with a lot of our guests. We did it with Dr. Lane, and so when we had him on. So, and he really enjoyed it. We'll see if you enjoy it just as much as he did. But our quick hitter questions, okay? I'm going to ask you a couple. I want the first thing comes to your mind. What's your favorite food?
Oh gosh, I love a good burger.
Okay, good burger.
And when I think about a good burger, I think of Nelson's Landing, which is no longer around.
Yep.
But the Landing Burger. But then, gosh, Bricks up in Oldsburg. Mm-hmm. Drive up there. They've got a Prohibition burger.
Okay.
And then the double cheeseburger from the farmhouse in Riley. Right.
Yep.
Like I said, hey, I'm a Riley County guy.
Exactly.
And so those are some tasty burgers.
That would consider you a hamburger or burger connoisseur right there. You just named off about 3 or 4 different hamburgers and where you can get them and what makes them unique. I think that's fantastic. And even knew the names of them. So, again, that's fantastic. So, favorite foods, hamburger. Here's one. Favorite movie. Do you have a favorite movie?
Well, back in the day when I was in college, it would have been Braveheart.
Okay.
But since you got me talking just now about burgers, I was also kind of thinking about Pulp Fiction.
Okay.
Because, Samuel L. Jackson talks about that looks like a tasty burger.
Exactly. It all comes back to the burger.
Oh, my gosh.
And no, Braveheart's a good one, too. But Pulp Fiction, yep, Quentin Tarantino. a lot of good stuff that he does.
Yeah, and hey, the other one, like, I'll be honest, the one that just makes me cry every time I watch it, The Notebook.
Yep. Everybody's seen The Notebook, and everybody enjoys it, whether they admit it or not. I think sometimes, some people try to say, "Oh, it wasn't that great," but it is a great movie. So, all right. So here's favorite music. You asked me about music. What's your favorite? If you had a song to broadcast out to the world, what would be your favorite? Either music, song, band. You take it where you want to go with it.
You bet. Well, first and foremost, Dave Matthews.
Okay.
And really, my partner has gotten me into to Dave Matthews.
All right.
And we've gone to a couple of concerts together. At our wedding, our first dance was You and Me.
Okay. Yeah. Nice.
And so I really like that idea of you and me together.
Mm-hmm.
Possibilities are endless. We can fly.
Yep.
And so that song has a lot of meaning. But I think if I was singing a song to the world today and why, I'd probably break out a little Michael Jackson.
Okay.
Man in the Mirror.
There you go.
Gosh, every time I hear that song, it's just like I want to sing. But Chris, I'm a horrible singer.
I'm in the same boat as you.
But it's that whole idea of, we got to start with us,
Yep.
the person in the mirror. And if we can get the person in the mirror right,
Yep.
then we have an opportunity for some significant transformational change.
Self-reflection and self-assessment, I think, is something. If there's something that I could still in people if there was a skill that I could give people that I think would be really valuable to them, they're most valuable, it's an honest self-assessment and honest self-reflection. Because you got to have a starting point to make yourself better for the next day. That whole hope, I have the power. Have that true self-assessment and true self-reflection, and be willing to work on it, or be like I said, that's that whole honesty piece that goes along with that same man in the mirror.
Well said. And constantly seek out feedback.
Yep, exactly.
And when you get feedback, do one thing. Say 2 words. Thank you.
Yep.
And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
I hear too many students when they ask for feedback and then they get really good feedback.
Yeah.
And then they dismiss it, or they justify it.
Yep.
Or they try to be like, oh, well, that was a bad day. And then they say, hey, Mike, will you give me some more feedback? No.
Yeah.
Like you were dismissive of the feedback that I originally gave you.
Yep.
2 words. Thank you.
Yep. Nope. I completely agree. Do you have a favorite hobby?
Hunting.
That's what I say. What's your what do you hunt?
White-tailed deer.
All right.
And story behind that, it's all because of my father.
Yep.
And when I was in college, I started to get into golf.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't tell you how many times I was like, hey, Dad, you want to get some golf clubs and go out and golf? He's like, no.
Yep.
But Dad was a hunter.
Yep.
And so if I wanted to have a meaningful relationship with my dad,
Mm-hmm.
I needed to kind of get excited about some of his passions and his interests.
Yeah.
And so I did. And gosh, I've been hunting now for 21 years, and I wouldn't trade any memory that I've ever had with my father, because I invested in his passion.
Yep.
And then his passion kind of turned into my passion.
Hey.
And it's a great father-son story.
So white-tailed deer, is it bow or rifle hunting?
It's bow now.
Okay.
I mean, I'll still pick up a rifle if I need to, but
Yep.
I really like the intimate experience and the challenge of bow hunting.
Yep. There's a whole nother aspect to it, or there it can be when it comes to bow hunting. I grew up in north central Kansas, white-tailed deer. I was a pretty avid hunter in high school and college. Not so much now. But with bow hunting, there's a whole nother philosophy to it.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot more patience.
Yeah. Hey, I'll make a commitment. You and I need to go on a couple hunts this year. And I just recently got into to waterfowl. Good friend of mine, Matt
Okay.
House, we're at Central Missouri State University. He got me into waterfowl, and what I love about it is it's social.
Yep.
So you and I could be sitting in the duck blind, and we could continue this conversation.
We got some land up, said Concordia area. About, I don't know how many acres up there, but also my wife's family, they're up in northeastern Kansas, and there is some prime hunting area up there that, like I said, my brother-in-law and my father-in-law, they're avid hunters, and they bring people up from. My brother-in-law lives in Texas. He'll bring people up from Texas to hunt here in Kansas, white-tailed deer hunt.
Wow.
And mainly his wife's family, because they're all from Texas, but they'll come up here and they're blown away by the size of the deer. They're looking at, they're used to, a pretty small spread. A nice 8-pointer would be good, but up here you're getting, the big spreads with the 15, 14 point deer, and they're big too. you know, and so they're always impressed.
You know what I love about that quick little conversation that we just had? It reminds me, if people make a commitment to be interested instead of interesting, think about how far that stretches.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's part of the strengths philosophy. Be interested as opposed to interesting. And if you invest in somebody else's passions, interests, then there's going to be some sort of a connection.
Oh, yeah. Like when your story with hunting with your dad, mine was music, you know. And I still, I now, like I said, the goosebumps are coming. I still remember when like I said, I got into music because my dad was into music. I mean, I would travel. We went all over the place, mainly small shows at like nursing homes in the community and stuff but he just did it because it was his passion. So I picked it up and started playing with him and things like that. But then what that did was we had a really, really great father-son relationship where when he found out I was into music, he would listen to the music that I was listening to. Awesome. And we'd sit down and talk about it. And you know, at that time when I was in junior high and high school, he was playing bluegrass gospel music. It wasn't really interesting to me, but he would sit down and be like, all right, let's listen to some of this rock and roll, some of this stuff that you're into. But then I still remember the day that I was driving home to go visit my family. I was coming from K-State, and I threw on a bluegrass gospel album, a CD that my dad had given me. I said, I'm going to give this a try. Still remember I was in a 1998 Ford Taurus heading north, going down 24, and then all of a sudden I put it on and it just clicked. I was like, this is amazing stuff. And I came home to my dad and I said, Dad, I got to tell you something. I get it. I get it. And he looked at me kind of confused, like, what do you get? So I put that in there and we sat down and listened to that CD, the entirety of it, twice, and just talked about it. And the smile that he had and the interest, like, it all paid off for him. He invested in my music, and now he's like, all right, now you're invested in mine, and we're having this conversation. It was phenomenal.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yep, that thing, you take an interest in, take an interest in other people.
Yeah.
It does nothing but help you out, you know.
I agree. I'm starting to think, gosh, maybe the main message here is kids, take an interest in what it is that your parents love to do to really find out who your parents are, and vice versa. Parents, take a vested interest in what your kids do.
Yep, exactly. That what you're saying there is my high school and college experience of playing music shows in places that my parents would probably never come to.
Yeah.
But their son was playing music there, and they would come and watch. And it was a comforting feeling. I even tell a story. My 83-year-old grandma came and watched at a bar that an 83-year-old grandma probably shouldn't have been in playing music, but she came and watched because she was interested in it. It was it's phenomenal. So anyway, yeah, that's goosebumps all over again.
I love it.
No, so I don't know if this one maybe. Do you have a biggest pet peeve?
Yeah. And my biggest pet peeve comes from, I think, the notion of take personal responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
So when I see things around where people haven't taken personal responsibility, that's an instant trigger.
Yep.
And one place where this is always prevalent is at the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you take a grocery cart, put the grocery cart back where you found it and where you actually got it. Don't leave it in a parking spot. Don't just leave it on the side of the road. But take enough personal responsibility to kind of play by the rules when the rules matter for the entire community. And I say that even like when people park. Like just give it an extra 3 minutes to align the vehicle up in the spaces where it's supposed to go. And now I say that that's a trigger. And I know that I've been guilty of it too. So then that's where your empathy, right? Like I wish I had more empathy because I also need to be more empathetic because one of my core values is kind. And so I don't ever want to dismiss a fact that maybe it's a parent who's like literally rushing to get from point A to point B. And so maybe they didn't pay as much attention to where they parked or where they left the cart. But that's taking personal responsibility.
There's always for me, if I see someone personal responsibility, let's say I'm at the grocery store and I'm in the car waiting for my partner to come out with whatever, and somebody does what I consider the right thing when nobody's looking, just makes me smile. I'm like, that's personal responsibility. Nobody's looking. You went and did that. And that's something that I value in a lot of people as well. So, personal responsibility. Take it. Last one. Okay. Last quick hitter question. What is your favorite part of K-State's campus? And that's a very, very broad general question. But I want to see favorite part of K-State, the campus here at K-State.
Yeah, that's easy. Students.
There you go.
The students are my favorite part. The interaction with students, it's what gets me up each morning. It's what gets me to campus. It's what motivates me. It's what fuels me. And there are so many K-State students that I haven't had a chance to connect with, but I'd love to hear their stories. And especially, when we had to pivot to online learning, that was the piece that really hurt my heart. Is that I felt disconnected to my students, whether they were in my class or not, just walking around campus. Everything that we do on a university, college campus should be aimed at students. It's got to be student-centered. And if it's not, then I don't know if that has a place on our college campus after COVID. We've got to invest in our students. And students are consumers. They'll find places where people will invest in them. And it's a favorite part about K-State, the students, no doubt.
Nope. I think your students, they really are your greatest resource in everything from recruitment to all aspects of it. Just like you said, you invest in them, they're going to invest in you as well. They're going to be coming to the K-State football games as alumni. They're going to go out into their job market, wherever they go, or to their grad school or wherever they go, and they're going to talk about their great time they had at K-State, and they're going to talk about how people here at K-State care about them. And I don't know. There's no research, and this is just me. Maybe it's all, but I think that's becoming a little bit more rare in certain places. That caring nature, that connectiveness, that relationship building. Especially with everything that's going on, not just pandemic, but it's becoming more easier to not have that connection, unfortunately. But people are going to go out there and they're going to say K-State cares, they connect with people. And that's like you said, you invest those students, they're going to invest in you. And it's only good things will come out of that. Yeah,
that's favorite part about K-State, hands down, the students. Now, I've been here for 20 plus years. As you think about my time as an admissions representative and then as a faculty, what's kept me here are my colleagues. I tell you what, the leadership studies, faculty, and staff, it's an extension of family. And the fact that we all connect with one another, share our research, share our knowledge, share our learning, and then even beyond leadership studies, the collegiality that happens here in an interdisciplinary nature around shared interests. Our friends in student life, friends in ORA, Office of Recruitment Admissions, it is literally one big team, housing and dining, that really we all rally behind. How can we create the best possible experience for our students? And that's what's kept me here over the years is the colleague to colleague interaction.
Right now we're working on with Dr. Lane, Vice President of Student Life. We're working on putting together some faculty and staff training around suicide awareness and prevention. And something that when I'm developing this training, the overarching theme is community member. We're not looking at just the Office of Student Life. We're not just looking at we're looking at a community. K-State is a community. How do we help build a good community member? How do we get them the tools and resources to be a positive, influencing community member here at K-State? And that's still what you just said. That's all of it. Like I said, everybody's got within their departments, they have people they connect with, but also when you look outside of your department, that's a community. And that's what we need right now, especially coming out of a global pandemic. Hopefully coming out of a global pandemic is we need a community, because then you're going to be connected to that community. You're going to feel that connectiveness. And when us as faculty and staff have that, it's going to trickle down. The students are going to pick up on it. It's going to motivate them to be a positive and a contributing community member.
You bet. Tomorrow will be better than today.
Exactly.
And I have the power to make it so.
Man, that is fantastic. Well, Mike, we've been going at it for a couple hours now. What I want to do is I want to give you the final word, okay? Your final word, what you want K-State to know after this podcast, or actually the world, because we're in a lot of different countries, which is some different countries. But I want to give you the final word. Mike Finnegan, Thrive at K-State podcast, what is your final word?
Yeah, gosh. It won't probably be a final word. It will be a final phrase.
There you go.
But when I think back to what we've even covered here today on strengths, engagement, well-being, authenticity, hero, I really, I guess, would ask listeners to really make a commitment to understand self and ask yourself, who are you? Where is it that you want to go? Who do you want to be? And what meaningful contribution do you want to make along the way? I ask my students this all the time. What is your leadership for what? Because when we find our leadership for what, we connect our values with our passions, with our interests, and then we leverage our strengths to do something positive and beneficial for the communities where we live and work. And so if everybody could find their leadership for what, I just think personally that then that's where you're going to be the most engaged. That's where your mind's going to be, where your feet are, and you're going to be able to keep your feet there and make significant traction towards progress.
I love it. Final word, but also a final challenge for people.
You bet.
All right. Well, Mike, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming on. It's been a fun 2 hours.
Hey, gosh, the pleasure's all mine. I can't wait to maybe get back and do a 2.0 with students and get some students rocking and rolling and rumbling in here.
Exactly. Bring them in, and we'll get it laid down, and we'll release it to the world. But that's it. We've talked about it. When there are students sitting in seats as well, the energy level is different. It's better, in my opinion, but the energy level is different. People are engaged. It's a lot of fun. This was fun, but having students here, it ratchets up the fun level tenfold.
Let's do it.
All right. Game. Thanks so much, Mike.
The Staley School of Leadership Studies provides students with academic knowledge and hands-on learning experiences that advance our mission of developing knowledgeable, ethical, caring, inclusive leaders for a diverse and changing world. So, what does that mean for our students at Kansas State University and beyond? Well, we're an interdisciplinary minor that complements your academic major. Students can earn a minor in leadership studies, a nonprofit leadership certificate, a secondary major in global food systems in partnership with the College of Agriculture, and a leadership communication PhD. Beyond the classroom, students can also engage in a series of co-curricular experiences to enhance their leadership education and development through service, both domestic and abroad.
If you would like to connect with Mike or any other faculty at Leadership Studies, please follow the links in the episode notes.